Today we're going to talk about marking your patterns, and we're going to use this assignment sheet that's available on Blackboard. The method that you use for marking your patterns is going to depend on the type of fabric you have, how quickly you plan on sewing. Also, you want to remember that you put your pattern markings on the wrong side of your fabric. One of the first methods that we're going to take a look at is tracing paper and tracing wheel, and there are a number of different pattern companies that offer tracing paper. Tracing paper usually is water soluble. You can wipe it off with a damp rag. Some of it is iron soluble. It will disappear with your iron. Read the directions that come with your particular brand. There's also another type called Mark Be Gone. This is what we call air erasable. That's similar to the air erasable pens we've talked about. And that lasts 24 to 48 hours. When you're going to be doing some marking with a tracing wheel and tracing paper, it's a good idea to put a magazine underneath so you don't perforate your tabletop. I'm going to just put this down a little bit so you can see this better. What you're going to do is take two squares of muslin, 2-inch squares, take your 8-inch strip, cut 2 inches off, and then cut it into 2-inch pieces. And you're going to put your tracing paper between the two pieces of muslin. And you're just going to mark, it usually would be a dot or a dash, with an X between the two, just a good firm X. And you can see that it's transferred to both sides. Most of your tracing paper is the water-soluble kind now. Every once in a while you might find an older one that is not water-soluble, so you want to make sure that you check that out. Another thing you can use are marking pens. We talked about the Mark Be Gone, which is the water-soluble pen. That's the blue one. The air erasable pen, which is the purple one, and they also make a combination pen with blue on one side, purple on the other. For this one, you're just going to take one square of muslin and make a mark. Now, if you have marking pens, you can use a marking pen, or you might have marking pencils that come in a variety of colors. These are usually water soluble too. These three are marked water soluble, so you could use those too. I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to make a mark with an X in the purple and an X in the blue, just to show you the two types. You only have to make one X, and you can make it with a purple pen, a blue pen, a marking pencil. Okay, so you only have to end up with one X, whatever marking tool that you happen to have. Other marking tools that you might find that are good, Tailors chalk comes in a variety of colors. Another one that's fun to use is a little sliver of plain white soap, but you do have to be careful of the fabric. For instance, something like silk, because this has an oily base, it would stain it. So those are two other marking tools that you could use, similar to the marking pens or pencils. We also now have friction pens. These will disappear under a hot iron, but you have to be careful because they will come back if the garment gets cold. The last thing we want to take a look at is making a tailor's tack, and for that you need a needle and thread. Usually when you're sewing, you take about an arm's length, and I do measure it that way, of thread. Thread your needle, and we don't put a knot in the needle. Thread your needle and bring it down to the other side so that they're fairly even. And then you're going to take your two pieces of fabric, I have two here, and put it through here. This was a method that was commonly used before all of the newer marking tools that we have now, the pens and the tracing paper. And you're going to take one stitch in and out, and I'm making a little bit bigger than you might have to make it, and pull it through and leave a little thread tail at the end, and then I'm going to go right back in where I went in and out where I came out in the same spot. And I'm going to pull this through, but I'm not going to pull it tight. I'm going to leave a loop. And I'm leaving a big enough one so that you can see it. Then I will clip this. Now if you had a number of these to do, like on darts, you could continue along before you cut it. So you have taken 2 stitches on the back, and here you have your thread tails and your loop. And then you very carefully want to pull the 2 pieces of fabric apart. And you want to clip them in between there. And you've got marks on both sides. Okay? On this side you have the loops, and on this side you have the cut parts. So that's another form of marking. Now with Tailors tacks, you want to be careful that the needle marks aren't going to mark your fabric. And also, I did it in black so that you could see it, but sometimes black thread does rub off on lighter fabric. I've had it happen once, but it can happen. So that's Tailor tacks. The problem with Tailor tacks is that they can fall out, especially if you fold things up and put them away to come back another day. They may get lost or start pulling out. So those are the 3 different forms of marking that we'll talk about using. When you're all finished, take those papers and attach them to the assignment sheet, the 2 tracing marks so I can see them. However you marked your X's with fabric pens or pencils or chalk, and then the Tailor's tack with the 2 pieces split apart and labeled on there. And those are some simple marking methods that you can use. We may talk about some others, but these are the most common ones.